Hello everyone, my name is Alicia and welcome to Double A Homestead. Now today we are going to be doing a garden tour and I'm very excited to show you what's going on inside the garden. But first, let's go ahead and check on the chickens. So it's been a while since we've showed you guys the chickens and they have grown up quite a bit since then. And some of them we have named, some of them we have not. This is what our coop looks like and our chicken run. It is almost finished. Andrew and his grandpa did a wonderful job building this. The only thing that it needs right now is we still got to finish putting dirt around the outside perimeter here. Underneath that there is a fence that does come out to help deter predators, but we just got to get the siding on and then it should be complete. Hey everybody, how's it going? So the reason why we haven't named everybody is because a lot of them look alike, unfortunately, and to decipher who is who has been kind of difficult. But I'll show you the ones that are in the coop and what we have named. Looks like they're starting to come out. This one here, I named her Paula. She reminds me of Paula Deen with all the fancy colors. And then over here, the olive looking one, or the, gray one, I decided to name her Olive. She is going to be laying olive eggs and I just thought it was appropriate. Here's the rest of the gang coming out. There's still a few more in there. Hey, you gonna come out? Let's take a look. Oh, the rooster just poked his head out. We named him Drewster. Hey guys, what are you doing? You come out and say hello? This is where obviously they roost at night, and then we've been keeping their food inside just because with the chicken run, you can see there is no protection, so when it rains, it'll get wet and we just don't want that. Before we get to the actual garden, I want to show you guys our potatoes and a few other things that we have in here as well. You can see behind me here, we have a lot of potatoes. I'm pretty sure we doubled our potato production this year just because last year there wasn't enough for what I wanted to do, so we doubled that. We might even have tripled what we had, honestly. Next to the potatoes, you can see we've got our peas, and these ones are doing really good. These ones are the King Tut purple pods, and compared to the other ones, they seem to be doing better. They must be able to tolerate heat a little bit better than what the other peas, but we have been having a little bit cooler weather, and that's definitely been helping out. We've got our strawberries and mostly herbs and lettuce over here. I do have, you can see this white powder on here, that's just DE. I've got kohlrabies in there. I'm honestly surprised that they have made it this far considering the weather that we've had, but they are still going. I think one of them bolted, I pulled it, but they seem to be growing slowly, which is expected with the heat, but so far doing good considering. Next to that, we have our garlic, and I'm really excited about the garlic. We did hardnecks this year and they're not quite ready yet, still maybe a couple weeks or so, and then we'll harvest those. And here in my tower, this is where I have all my herbs except for the dill. I needed a little bit more room for that just because I use a lot of dill while canning, but I've got, you know, pretty much all your basics: rosemary, lemon balm, oregano, thyme, basil, all of that. And I do have lettuce on the other side here. I did harvest most of this over here. Some of it kind of didn't make it. It's kind of in the shade quite a bit. So I might have to rearrange that at the end of summer. Now that I have showed you that little garden, let's go to the main garden. And like I said, I am just so excited to show you guys. Unfortunately, we are a little bit behind with the growing season. This year has been a little bit difficult for us just because we had to put this whole garden in. We weren't able to when we moved in just because we had to take it down first. You guys saw all that, but we have the garden finished, thankfully, and now it's just kind of a waiting game. I have been thoroughly enjoying coming out here every single day, just checking on everything, making sure everything's okay. Starting off with sunflowers. I didn't plant the first ones here just because I have a Gorilla cart and I like to bring that in to help me harvest things. It's just easier sometimes to use that instead of lugging tons of baskets around. Behind me you can see our cabbages. We had a storm come through and it just completely shattered our row cover. I don't know why that happened. The material, I'm honestly pretty shocked. The first row covers that we ordered from Amazon, it was a great row cover. We really liked it. It was the perfect thickness. It served us a couple years, and then we moved here and I ended up buying the same exact ones, which were what I thought were the same exact ones. And unfortunately what happened, I don't know if it was like a supplier change, what had happened, but these are not the same ones that I had gotten. And like I said, that storm came through and just shredded it. Because the size of the length of it, we have to have special ones and we needed something right away. So I did order the same ones, but we are looking into other options as well from other suppliers besides Amazon to get better ones that will last us through the season a little bit better. Just because, I mean, when you're paying, you see there's 2 rows here, when you're paying 15, 20, 30 bucks a pop for a row cover, that gets expensive over time. So we are definitely looking into other options, but I need to get these covered up right away just because of the heat and cabbage worms. I don't want them to wipe out this crop just because I really need these this year. I wanted to show you kind of what I mean. There's little pieces floating around the garden. I've been trying to pick them up, but they're like literally, it's disintegrating. Look at that. It's wild. I've never seen that before. I don't know why, what happened, if it's an old row cover that they sold me or what, but I'm pretty shocked. While the row cover is off and before we replace it, I wanted to show you what the cabbage looks like. This is red cabbage and it's my absolute favorite to grow in the garden. The color on it is just absolutely stunning. But I did notice that I have cabbage worm, which is not surprising considering the row cover has not been on these properly for a few days. That's why we have the row covers, to keep these safe from those cabbage worms. Because that row cover was not on properly, we are going to be using DE if there are any more cabbage worms in here. So when we would put the row cover back on, they're not eating them while the row cover is on, and we don't have to worry about that. So those are steps that we are going to do to make sure that we get a good harvest this year. now that that is taken care of, we can move on with the garden tour. Next thing I want to show you is my absolute favorite, besides the red cabbage, is zucchini and summer squash. Now I absolutely love growing these. Unfortunately, like I said, things in the garden are a little bit behind. I should be harvesting these by now, but it is what it is, and I'm just happy to be able to be growing things this year. Starting off with the zucchini, and we have 3 of these, and they're all different varieties. I used what we had. I think there is a Black Beauty, and then from where we used to live, a local nursery that we got some seeds from, but they're doing wonderful, and I think, yes, there's one. Happy to say that we have babies, and I can't wait. I have been pruning these, checking for vine borers, and checking for squash bugs as well. The next 3, you guessed it, are yellow squash, and I have quite a few on these too. I was out here last night double checking, and I've got one there. There's more on other ones, but that one I noticed right away and I was really excited about. Now, a couple things with this squash and zucchini. I prune them every year. I have had no issues. Of course, you want to be careful with over pruning. I prune the underleaves when they get gross and nasty, just to help get some airflow in there. They get powdery mildew pretty easily, at least from my experience. I get that pretty easily. In August, it gets more humid, so I could probably start treating for that. Now, like vine borers, I actually saw one the other day. I'm not quite happy about it. I did manage to kill it. It was flying around, it landed on a pepper plant, took my shoe, took it right out. I'm hoping, because there's one, I'm sure there's probably more to follow, but I'm hoping that I won't have any issues with that. I was hoping, because we moved out here, there's really no other gardens around that I know of anyway that anyone has, and we wouldn't have any issues with that. You know, the squash bugs and the vine borers. I know the place that we were at previously, we had a garden literally right next to our garden. I don't know if you were even able to see it in the videos, which was completely fine. But the squash bugs and the vine borers were horrendous. I had never had so many issues in my life with that. I didn't even experience that until we had moved there. So I'm hoping, because the zucchini and summer squash are a little bit behind this year, that I won't have so many issues this year. So I'll keep my fingers crossed and hope and pray. We have our arches up, and this year we're only doing gourds on the arches. The first year we did arches, we put beans and we put gourds on here way too much. It was overcrowded, just way too much. So we really simplified it this year. We do have 4 spots, but only 3 of the 4 germinated. So we'll see how it goes this year. In the very first row here, where my finger is, those are acorn squashes. In the row over, those are butternut squashes. I cannot go without growing acorn ever again. Last year was the expansion, and I've grown acorn before, but the first garden that we had, you can see in previous videos way back, that we had grown an acorn, completely took over almost the whole garden. I had to cut it back. So when we did the expansion, first thing I wanted to do, acorn butternut. Love them. There's nothing better than taking an acorn, cutting it in half, putting butter on it, brown sugar, and baking it in the oven. Oh my gosh, it's absolutely delicious. One of my favorites. So we have that. Did something a little bit different this year. I also did that with the zucchini and the summer squash. I actually wood chipped underneath just to help with the vine borers. I'm hoping that may do something. If it works, I'll let you guys know. Like I said, I did see a vine borer, so let's see what happens. Of course, nothing completes your garden like a good cherry tomato. We have 4 pots here. I was hoping to get the actual cherry tomatoes in the garden instead of putting them in pots. Maybe that's something that we can discuss next year. But for now, we've got them in our pots like we have previously. For the first one here, we've got the Sun Gold, the little Bing there in the middle, just a little guy. I'm curious of how that's gonna turn out as far as cherry tomatoes. they are starting to produce. I am taking out the flowers, even though they should be producing flowers by now. Just because they are a little bit smaller, I want them to get a little bit bigger, established a little bit more before they do that. And on the very end there, I've got another Sun Gold and a Super Sweet. I thought I had 4 different kinds, but I guess I was wrong. I guess that's what we had and that's what we planted. This year, what I did is, because we ran out of corn, we had a whole extra row here. Instead of putting those long beans on the arches, I decided, well, Andrew had an idea of putting them here, which I thought would be a great spot because it has something to climb on, and hopefully it doesn't get too crazy. As you can see, almost every spot is filled except for one. So we'll see how this goes this year with the long beans. The beans that I have growing in there is yard long, the Chinese red noodle, and actually there's a snake bean in there. I wanted to grow that last year, just didn't have really the room. I kind of snuck it in there. They get like crazy big. So like I said, that's why I'm saying like space issue. We'll see how it goes. If it gets too nuts, I'll probably pull one of the beans out there and see how that goes. But if it is, I'll know for next year. One great thing about having a garden and trying new things is experimenting and then learning from your mistakes and then changing it next year. But you can see I have corn behind me here, and definitely probably going to be a late harvest this year with most things in the garden, I would assume. But they are growing, they're doing beautifully. I am really excited about it. The first year that we grew corn, they did really well with the ground cover, but we had earwig issues. So I haven't, of course, knock on wood, seen any earwigs this year, so I'm hoping we won't have any problems, but you never know what's gonna happen with your garden until it happens. My absolute favorite, besides the red cabbage and the acorn squash and zucchini and all that, I have cucumbers. I love growing cucumbers, and I have so many different varieties of cucumbers this year that I want to go over with you. I did grow the same as last year, but there also are a few that are different that I have seen in videos, and they looked so intriguing. I am growing my go-to, which is the Dar cucumber and the Chicago pickling cucumber. I love them both. They do really well for us. The Dar is probably my absolute favorite from the Chicago pickling cucumber, just because they grow really small and they are super easy to can, because typically you don't have to cut them to size just because they are so small, which is really nice and saves time in the kitchen. One of the ones that I am growing that is different is the Mexican sour gherkin. They are super tiny and I cannot wait for them. I just hope they taste as delicious as they look. You can probably already tell what I have behind me, but if not, that's totally okay. These are tomatoes, and typically this whole row, and there's some behind you as well, but these get pretty crazy. This row gets pretty serious when these are full blast growing tomatoes, blooming, you name it. I try my best to keep these trimmed up throughout the summer, the growing season. I can't always keep a tight eye on these guys, but I do my best, and honestly, that's all you can do is your best. But they are growing really nicely. Keeping those bottom leaves trimmed up so they're not touching the ground to help prevent any of those diseases. I did do something different this year. I actually planted basil with the tomatoes. They are incredible companion plants. My understanding help deter pests. Not sure exactly what kind. If you know, go ahead and drop that in the comment below. I may regret it because in every single tomato plant I sprinkled a few seeds, and there is quite a few tomato plants here. I honestly don't know what I was thinking when I did that. I was just thinking, man, none of these are gonna germinate, and probably because of that, every single one's probably going to germinate. But we'll see what happens. That pretty much does it for today. There are still lots of things in the garden that I haven't showed you guys yet. And of course I wanna save things for other videos as well. But I wanna thank you guys so much for joining me on this video. I loved having you on the homestead, and I can't wait to see you guys on the next one. If you really help us out by giving us a like, subscribe, and share, we would really appreciate that. And until next time, take care.